Welcome to the Conversation Unscripted. This is an archived radio broadcast that aired through New72 Media on Blog Talk Radio. I'm Ruth Evelyn, and this audio is part of a series of unscripted interviews where I was asked a variety of spontaneous questions by editor Mary Holden. The Conversation Unscripted was aired periodically over the course of several months. Not all remain available to share with you today. However, in these episodes, the channeled information that came through while we were in conversation is timeless and especially relevant today. Please enjoy this conversation for yourself and share with others that we may continue to uplift well-being throughout our world. Hello, welcome to the Conversation Unscripted. It is December 16th, 2015, and we are in a first-time pre-recorded show of the recording of the Conversation Unscripted. I am Ruth Evelyn, and I am here with my co-host, Mary Holden. Mary, how are you doing?
Ruth, I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Is there, before I launch into any of my stuff, is there anything in particular you want to talk about today?
The power of words, just something small.
Yeah.
The power of words to change the world. And that has been on my mind for the last 2 weeks on several projects that I've been working on. And the more I talk about it, the more I believe in it myself. And I know you've got a take on that, but please bring us some new information.
That's very interesting because the first piece of information coming through is it is a delicate process, meaning that the power is so strong in the content of any verbiage that incredible chemistry occurs.
Well, that's the magic word of the day, chemistry. I have been thinking about chemistry all week long and about the atom and the proton, the electron, and the neutron. And I've been thinking about the charges that are related to those three subatomic particles, the positive, the negative, and the neutral. And for a long time, I was thinking about how the positive has a charge that everybody seems to understand. It's the attractive charge. And the electron has the negative charge that everybody seems to understand. That's the repulsive charge. But the neutron is neutral energy. And when I think of the word neutral, I think of null and void and blank. But then neutral, when it's attached in the phrase energy, it does carry some energy. And I think it has a lot of potential to be explored. But that's a little bit away from the power of words.
It isn't.
From English class to chemistry class in a single bound was pretty ridiculous. Can you bring it back?
But it isn't different. It isn't different because first of all, when you consider neutral is actually a neutralizing agent. It is a balancing agent. It is also a space of beingness where opposites can come together in that space where agreement can be created. There's a lot of power within that space of neutral. And it's really interesting. I just haven't associated neutral with void and blank in a very, very long time. For me, neutral is that center beingness. It's that space where one can take a breath, one can regroup, and one can just be. And in that space of being, that is where that is the center of your power.
You know that there's one chemical element that does not have a neutron, and that is hydrogen, which is a component of water. We've talked about water on other shows and how the quantity of water in the human body brings in information. Yet there's no neutron in hydrogen. I just find these pathways that I seem to go down fascinating. I can't explain any of it, and I'm beyond the point of even trying anymore. But often things pop up that just look so interesting, and then they seem to reach a cul-de-sac or a dead end, and I can't get past them.
Well, I was going to ask the question, but I'm being corrected. Could it be water is the chemical neutralizer? What do you think of that?
Well, I do know that there's a lot of power in the word, which is the sound vibration, and there's a lot of power in the water, which seems to be the particle component of the sound wave, in the power of the word being the power of the sound of the word, and the power of the water to clean, to neutralize, to diffuse.
It's a calming agent.
It sure is.
It's a calming, I was thinking about that the other day. I am in a winter wonderland right at the moment, and I have incredibly gorgeous icicles forming right outside my window. And there are huge clumps of trees or snow still on the branches because of the amount of snow we got. I have one tree out here that still has snow on its branches. And I was thinking about the contrast, and not necessarily the contrast, but the heat of Phoenix and the experience of Phoenix and the warmer areas, and how I don't know if there's psychological tests or what kind of, or neuropathic tests, but in science, they've done tests on emotions, and when it's hot, people are angrier, and in cooler weather, we don't have as much. The cooler weather tends to calm people down. So I find this conversation interesting, number one.
Well, we're back to the neutral aspect of, so you think of the beautiful fall days or the spring days when it's neither hot nor cold, and how that correlates to what emotion might be. And I'm thinking that this is taking us down the path of diplomacy and the power of word to change the world, to translate ideas, to put ideas out that can be debated both in the negative and in the positive. We can find good points and we can find bad points. And then to bring back to center and to find the diplomacy, to find what is the balance in between. I have a feeling that a lot of things in the world, which for so many years were seen as black or white, good or bad, inactive or active, we as a human race are coming more toward the center in all things. I know that there's still a lot of factions out there and a lot of ways of thinking that are to one side more than the other.
It's interesting. And yes, that's correct. We are, the lines are blurring. The acceptance is blooming, and coming into full fruition. What's coming forward, what's birthing itself, or what has birthed itself, is authenticity. And that authentic expression that is the expression of the true self. I wrote a piece just yesterday, actually, or a couple days ago, about how the light of someone's holographic field is the operating system of the body, of course, and its strength in this physical experience as a human being is what brings the secrets and lies to the surface. And so when you look at what's going on in the world around us, we have generations now, whole generations now, that have come in with this immense strength in their light quotient that isn't going away. And because there are so many, that creates a strengthening of each other, whether they know each other or not. It's like a coagulation, a pooling of the light, and a strengthening of the light is underway. And so with that, in order for the light to become and be its natural self, in order for you to be your natural self, whatever is false has to be usurped, taken care of, dissipated, forgiven, however it is, transmuted, whatever it is that an individual does within their own system. That's who has to take care of that individual experience. When you have a collective that is grouped and grouping as we are, and we are facing these quote unquote enemies of darkness, it does take the pooling of our collective action to overcome, to dissipate, to disengage those lower experiences. And so here you have the light that has gained in its power, which is pulling out all of the falsehoods out of their secret hiding place. And so here's what you see in real time, is that you have hidden factions that are planning, that are, maybe not even in the planning stage. They're just angry people, or they have these hidden agendas, and suddenly they get this idea to go and strike Paris or collect people from around the world to join them in their disparate actions. And so because of the power of light that their intensity comes to fruition, their plan. It's time for them to do their action. And what that's doing is they're coming out of hiding. And that is when light gets to take its opportunity and negate the circumstance. But what happens in reality is that people get angry, they get scared, they get, and so they inadvertently feed into the power of the negativity instead of the power of the light. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So you keep cycling that fear, that even if you're a good person reading about a very unfortunate mass killing or violent act in the news, the more you focus on that, the more fear feeds it.
Not necessarily. And that's what, we don't want you to think that just because you read about something or listen to the news, that is going to adversely affect you. It is critical for awareness to be part of the daily function. Now, it's not necessary to immerse yourself in the dark side of humanity just to know what's going on, because that can pull you down. But awareness of what's happening when it's time for you to become aware is critical to your path going forward. And an example of that is, I don't always have access to television news, but there are groups of days or weeks when I like watching the nightly news, and it's time for me to get caught up in the world, and not caught up in the world, but caught up on the current information of what's going on in the world. And then I disengage. When it's time to disengage, I disengage. So It gives me enough information to stay up to date, to be informed, and to not keep my head in the sand. But just because you look at it, just because you read it, doesn't mean that you're engaged in it. It actually gives you the opportunity to discover what is your role.
So you're guided by your intuition on when it's time to watch the news and when it's time to stop watching the news?
Precisely. The catch is, when is it time to stop watching the news? Many people get addicted to it, and then they jump into these fearful conversations. And it's when you jump into the conversation with others who are in fear and who are not looking at the solution that you can get tripped up and pulled down and sucked in.
Well, now we're on to a major topic, back to that, the power of words to change the world. There was a great example yesterday where the public school system in Los Angeles was shut down because of a threat of violence. Apparently, the New York City public schools also had the same threat, and they refused to shut down because they had done a different type of due diligence than the people in Los Angeles. So two different threats, or two threats, two different areas of the country. One takes radical action to shut down, and the other does some discernment and keeps going. How do you know then what to believe is the truth when you have something so separately happening on each of the different coasts? And then in the case of New York, when they review what the threat was, when they boiled it down to discern whether or not it was true, they decided that it was not true because of misspellings of words and things like that. I'm baffled by this. I'm not really sure of the power of media and journalism to cover any event other than what's happening in my local community. How do we use our intuition to do a discernment on what we decide to intake and have be meaningful to us in terms of nationally happening events, especially conflicted events like the one yesterday? Do you have any advice on that? Or I know that you channel information, and I think we're probably at a point where something needs to be channeled. We need advice from somewhere else because it feels so chaotic.
Well, it's critical. Michael is saying, as we have said before, it is critical to get in touch with your own system, because how can you know the truth of the voice that you hear inside if you haven't made friends with it, if you haven't listened to it, if you don't know what it sounds like and feels like? Someone can say this is an interesting statement. Someone can say they are your father, but unless you know the feeling of their essence, unless you know the sound and the cadence of their voice, how do you know that it's your father? And this is the same as within your own self. Until you know the cadence of your own voice, how do you trust it? And so it's necessary to listen to the cadence of your own voice, to hear the resonance, to test yourself out, so that you learn trust, so that you learn to believe yourself, and that you learn to understand the language that you speak within you. Now, you have two different ends of the country, similar situations, and vastly different reactions. Neither is incorrect, neither is correct. It is a choice, it is instinct, it is belief. And so each decision maker, or each group of decision makers, were deciding based on the information that they had, whether it came in intuitively, whether it came in from previous experience, whether it came in from pressure. each acted in their own manner, and each decided accordingly. Now, where we get tripped up as the onlooker is judging either one as right or wrong.
It makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm.
So it's necessary in anything that you always come inside and discern. That's how you learn. Trust is not about trusting the world around you and the people around you. Trust is first about learning to trust yourself. And then once you know how to trust yourself, then you can apply that trust to the world around you. And you're going to find that you're not going to get caught up in as much drama when you trust yourself.
Let's drill this down to different categories of people in our society. I am going to be 59 next month, so that puts me as a baby boomer. And I think I came into this earth when there was not as much light. I probably didn't bring in as much light as the kids who are coming into the earth like right now, and the second generation of our baby boom generation. Are the kids who are coming in now more light-filled, more able to discern than, say, people from our generation?
We're going to explain something first. Well, we're going to explain something. Everyone has access to the same amount of light. Not everyone has access to the same amount of shadow.
Ooh. Okay, that's going to take some explanation.
Okay. Consider the makeup of what is termed as in this explanation. Well, okay. In this scenario, okay, shadow is the negative side of the human genetics, the human genetic code. It's the lower vibration, the trauma, the drama, the victimization, succumbing to threat, overpowering and intimidating someone. Those are all in the genetic code. Those are not in anyone's light code above the soul layer. So you may come in with a little bit of taint, T-A-I-N-T, T as in Tom, as unfinished business from your soul layer, and you will complete that in these lifetimes now. That is not acceptable to leave shadow behind, leave unfinished business behind. This is why you have so many awakening, so much conscious awareness. So everyone's genetic makeup is very different. Someone from a highly contentious genetic line is going to have a lot more to clear out and a lot more difficulty getting into a positive mode, getting into a happy mode, than someone who comes from a less contentious genetic line.
But you still hear stories of people who do that, people who come out of situations of extreme poverty, being wealthy, healthy, and happy, as opposed to just staying within that. Something allows them to break out of that. Is that how they access the light? They access
the light is what empowers that shift upward. So in predetermined circumstance, there are many who are determined to get beyond their genetic upbringing no matter what. And so they are going to get in touch with their light, and they are going to do whatever it takes to lead a happy life, to get beyond this old information. And we're seeing that in a lot of humanity now. And there are others who don't have that drive, that will to move beyond circumstance. And that still exists. And that's part of that neutralizing capacity within the planet, within humanity, so that we all raise up gently rather than rather than snapping the twig, so to speak. So we all have access to the same amount of light. It is choice. It is choice. And it is choice.
Yeah, so the amount of light is actually a choice that's made available.
Choosing a life, choosing your authenticity is choice.
Okay, and then that accessing your amount, your light quotient or quanta. I'm writing notes because I'm so fascinated by this.
Well, and each person within, okay, I am to explain something to you, and everyone, I personally am encouraging everyone to go into their own discernment, because this has been channeled to me many, many times, and they're channeling it to me again. Mm-hmm. When a fetus is in the womb, the soul light, the self enters the light, enters into the fetus at 5.5 weeks. It remains for 6 weeks, gathering information of the genetic coding. It leaves the fetus and goes to the plan, the design for the current world circumstance, for the current lifetime, for what is current, for what is and for what is evolving. Returns to the womb 6 to 8 weeks later. And that light imprint is imprinted into the fetus, into the body, and becomes your light pattern for this lifetime, the design. Now, generally around 8 years old is when we tend to choose fear over love. We choose the conditioning over our light design. And at that point, 80% of that light that is accessible into that human body retreats, because it cannot be around, it cannot survive and cannot thrive in the harsh reality of human anxiety, fear, abuse, all of that.
This takes my breath away.
So when you turn to your light and say, I choose light, and generally it's when you're in a lot of pain and you're down at the bottom, then that light starts coming back, but it doesn't come back all at once. It comes back in little bits, only not as pieces, as like a horse that's corralled, or a kitten, not a horse that's corralled, like a kitten, a scared kitten. And it's not that it's scared, it's that and it's not that it doesn't believe you, it knows you. It knows the human self, the human side is not going to immediately embrace itself as light. And so it stays out, and you get little doses at a time. And in those little doses at a time, this is what we see as moving through levels. We as humans see as moving through levels, and because it takes a lot to accept our true power, our authenticity, especially when the world all around us is saying something vastly different.
That's the human struggle, Ruth. Why is it so hard? Why do they make it so hard? Are we supposed to be toughening something up somewhere at some energy?
Who's they?
Well, they. I mean, whoever. Oh, the human designers. Them.
You.
Those people.
That's you.
You
are the designer of your own life, and how much, whatever the struggle is the challenge of accepting your own true power, your own authenticity, and what you came here to say, and what, are you willing to put yourself out there as who you are, not as who you think you are, not as who your parents say you are, not as who your spouse or whoever else is around you thinks you are, but as who you really are. Very different people.
Very true. So there is a freedom that comes with doing the work to know your true self. Can you speak to those who are in fear of that freedom? Those who say it's easier to just follow the script?
Well, okay. Bad choice of words, simply because
it was purposely chosen.
Well, the script is, in their terms, is what you came here to say. It is your authenticity. So you're talking about the human condition. And those who are in fear, I mean, and that's also a judgment, because it's very comfortable to have a paycheck. It's very comfortable to know that your bills are paid. It's very comfortable to live within the realm of acceptance within your community, whether that's your family, your blood family, friends, whatever it is. That's very comfortable. Now, stepping out of that is difficult, because when you step beyond those borders, you're stepping into an unknown. You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know what that road looks like. And so there is a tendency to go back into the comfort zone. And so is it necessarily fear, or is it unknowing? It's different for everyone. Is it as far as they're meant to get in this lifetime? Or is it complacency?
Ooh, you just said the word that I just wrote. Complacency versus patience. What's the difference between complacency versus patience?
Complacency makes Michael very angry. Which is kind of a funny thing. But in his instructions to me, and in his description of humanity, he really doesn't care which side you choose. Pick a side and do something.
Okay. Pick the side of light, pick the side of dark, but pick something and do something, and craft a life.
Craft a life.
Craft a life.
You have a finite period of time in this human body, in this specific makeup of genetic coding, of information, of friends, family, opportunities, steps. This is a unique moment in the span of time. Sitting, watching television with a remote control and a bag of potato chips is a gross underuse of that opportunity.
Although sometimes you just have to do it.
Correct.
You need the rest.
It's necessary. It's necessary to have those kinds of moments. But to live a life like that years on end I can feel the
anger?
Yeah.
I can
Yeah,
feel it.
I do have a friend, and I don't know if I've mentioned this before. Maybe I have. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the radio, but I met this friend in 2001. And in 2001, this friend was telling me about the difficulty in his relationship, in his marriage, and how he was so angry at his spouse, and she doesn't care about him, and he doesn't have a say, and all of this stuff, all of this marriage relationship stuff. And he was having the same conversation over 3 months, and I finally looked at him and I said, so if things were the same 5 years from now, would you be happy? And he said, absolutely not. And I said, well, so what are you going to do about this? And he just kind of looked at me with this blank look. Here we are in 2015, 14 years later, and it is the exact same conversation. That's sad.
But that also is the human's free will to choose to change something and to choose to stay in the same cycle of not getting anywhere.
This is his point. He doesn't care which side you choose. Choose shadow, choose light, do something. Standing still, doing nothing, isn't living.
Okay. So any listeners out there who are standing still, sit up and pay attention.
Well, and he's stating, in the entire spiritual community, we have a lot of that. And here's why. Because a lot of people get into these meditative states, they feel really good about themselves, but they forget to get up and take action.
Okay. So let's do that. Let's go into a meditative state, not us, but let's talk about what that meditative state looks like. You have a 9-to-5 job, and it's a Wednesday, and you woke up and you did the morning routine, took a shower, had breakfast, went off to work, worked the whole day, went to lunch with friends, came home at 5, had a cocktail, had dinner, watched some TV, and now you say, now I'm gonna get ready and start my nighttime routine, and I'm gonna go meditate. And I go spend 15 minutes, I pop the earphones in, and I'm listening to sounds of the ocean. And the 15 minutes are over, the wave stops, and I go to bed. I have not really moved myself forward because all I've done in that meditation is a stop action. I've just had 15...
Not necessarily.
Go.
Because getting into those states starts the unwinding and the unconditioning. And so you do that often enough, and you're going to start hearing your own internal voice. And you're going to start a communication with your internal voice. What you're doing in the day of work and raising children, these are very honorable, very, they're not necessarily complacent. If they are part of your foundation, if they are your path, if you love what you do, these are not horrible things. Society will call them horrible things, but truly they're honorable. And so, but if you get your messages, and you have an idea, and you guide yourself to start painting, and it's 10 years before you start painting, that's 10 years of time. And these are limited lives. These are limited opportunities of, what do we have generally? 10 to 110 years in this genetic mix of your light, your genetic light, your cellular DNA, and your human DNA. This is a unique mix. And so there is an opportunity here for you to take that mix and show it to the world. Now, how big is that world? Is it the entire world? Is it your community? Is it your immediate family? It's you. How far do you want to, what was it? Gosh, I read this a long time ago and it really has helped me. If you knew you could not fail, how far would you fly? How high would you fly? How far would you go?
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
And in your design, the only way you can fail is by not doing what you came here to do. And it's not that you even failed at that. You're gathering information. So if you don't get done what you came here to do, you recycle back and do it again.
Okay. So that leads me to a question about what you just called cellular DNA and human or physical DNA. The human physical DNA appears to be composed of chemicals, and the cellular DNA is composed of, fill in the blank.
Well, there's actually 3 layers that you're working with as a coding. You have your DNA, that's the physical genetic coding, and that includes the information of your human history, human ancestry, gender history, cultural history, and so that has to do with the evolution of the human system, the physical system. So then you have your cellular DNA, which is the next layer. And that is the unfinished business that you have left in previous lifetimes, that you're here that it's time to clean those up, to finish that business. And we have a huge collection of unfinished business. And so that's why people feel lost. They feel impatient. They're calling in their soulmates, which is calling in that partner to clean things up. Not necessarily a good relationship.
Right.
And then you have your light code, your frequency, what we have called the key, your authenticity, which is your pure light design for this lifetime, which is a specific coding for this particular match of cellular DNA and human DNA.
That's so beautiful. That is so beautiful.
It's delightful to watch, they're saying to me.
So there's like this big otherworldly factory where you have probably you play some role in how you match up these 3 components.
Precisely, Mary.
Your unfinished energy that you're bringing in from past lives, if you will, past experiences, and then your human DNA and your light code, which is how everything shows up in that aura surrounding the soul and the human. And in your light code, then there's a little bit of free will where you can change things up and make a decision to stay on the couch and eat potato chips or to go out and go to a dance.
There's divine will and there's human will.
Oh, something else entirely. Please explain.
Divine will is according to your design, your light design, your plan, your predestination.
Mm-hmm.
Human will is they're terming it as your neglect of your divine will. And here's the thing, is the divine will does have more power over the free will once it kicks in. And that's where you live the life where you seem to not have, you feel like you don't have a choice in the matter. And really the choice has been made by you pre-incarnation. So it's a choice you've already made. It's just that you're not consciously aware of that choice.
It's really pretty funny. So your neglect of your divine will, and then when you are not neglecting your divine will, then you're paying attention to it and you're wondering how you can get your own life to line up with that and be in alignment so that your human life actually matches up with what your divine pre-planned life included. Is there still a factor of surprise in either of the two components? A factor of surprise in divine will and a factor of surprise in human will? I love to hear you laugh. I don't really know how I craft these questions to get you to laugh, but it's always delightful when you do.
Okay. They are saying that they are always surprised when we choose not to have fun, when we choose shadow, when we choose the repeat scenarios. They are always surprised. So to answer your question, there's surprise at many layers.
Yeah, I get it.
And awe.
It's really beautiful. It's a sense of humor too. So it appears
Precisely.
that the energy of a sense of humor is something that is really very, very important. I was having a conversation with friends, a group of friends not long ago, and we were talking about the people who we enjoy being around most, and it's always the ones who have the touch of humor, who can make you laugh. And, sometimes you just have to, well, I'm going to tell you what happened to me yesterday because I laughed so hard and it's so irreverent, but I was at the hairdresser getting a haircut and my hairdresser took out her phone and said, I have to show you this picture. And it was a woman wearing underwear on the front of which was a face of a cat.
Got it.
And she said it was a public space and she's very conscious of the business that she runs. So she said, this is the best way to get some kitty for the kitty. And she was going to put them on her Christmas list because they looked like such a fun present, although you have to connect with humor. You've got to connect with people that are happy, people that want to be happy. Many years ago, I put a mandate in my life. If happiness is not your choice, if it's not your goal, if you're not at least striving for it, even when you have bad day or bad phases, we get it. But if happiness is not what you're looking toward, then you don't belong in my life. And I let Mary know that I finished my screenplay this morning, and a very epic experience, rewriting it four or five times and just really getting through it and getting into this beautiful, beautiful space. And I had told my mentor that for the last 2 weeks, that he couldn't see any of it until I was done. So I restarted it from scratch. And so what I sent him today was completely different than what we had been working on. And I was very nervous. I was not nervous until I hit send. And then about a half hour later, I started getting nervous. And his response, when I finally got the email, his response was very playful. And it just was, it's like, I am so grateful to be connected with these playful people in my life. I love it. It's necessary. That's a great story, Ruth. And you're right. It was an epic. I stayed up all night reading it. It's such a good story. Thank you for that. But I went into this, if I'm going to create and raise children in this world, one of my top requirements for myself as the person who's playing the role of their mother is, by gosh, I am going to raise these kids to have a sense of humor. And that was at the top of my list.
I grew up with laughter in the house, so it was just not even a question.
Yeah. So how are we going to find humor? And I have to say that there were times that I was going way off the deep end in order to find some humor and to allow them to have some humor that was maybe a little bit off the grid and maybe a little bit underappreciated by some of the other parents that I affiliated with. But I'll never take back any of those moments that we had where we shared laughter as a family.
I think laughter is a major coping skill.
Well, and it just feels so good. I mean, it feels so good. We laughed throughout the haircut yesterday, and it was so good. I didn't want to leave. I just wanted to keep the jokes and the laughter going. I always tell her I tip generously because it's not so much the haircut, it's the half an hour comedy show. It's lovely.
I was very, very fortunate to marry a humorous man because we were in very difficult circumstances in hospitals and different situations, and he would have the nurses laughing, he would have me laughing, and they would just be so surprised that in our dire circumstances we were able to find humor. But that's really the way I was raised, and you have to, if you take life too seriously, well, that's not necessarily the right statement. Life cycles. Life cycles. And it's okay to find the irony in the experience. It's okay to, this is really an interesting statement. Okay, I'm going to say it. It's okay to laugh at something funny that happens with the priest in church. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to let that freedom, you don't want to be rude. You want to consider, and have compassion for people. But laughter is a very important, it's a generous.
Laughter might be the neutron. Laughter might be the neutral energy that diffuses the negative.
No, he's saying not necessarily. Okay. Laughter is he's showing me my heart, the heart center, and he's talking about it being a dose of generosity on the health of the heart.
A dose of generosity on the
health of the heart.
Oh. Wow. Let that one sink in. A dose of generosity on the health of the heart is the role that laughter plays.
Correct.
In its function.
Well, and think about the heart, and especially we have a lot of situations in a human experience of heartbreak. Things that contract the heart, things that cause that energy of the heart to withdraw. And laughter opens us up. And it does. I mean, now that we're talking about this, it brings generosity. It opens up that space and causes that heart center to open up.
Well, laughter is preferable to actual open heart surgery. So heart disease, heart disease being things that affect the physical heart, and heartbreak, things that affect the emotional heart. And how laughter is the ultimate sort of balm or medication or supplement to keep both of them probably in a healthy state.
Well, the emotional heart is the foundation to the physical heart.
Right.
And don't forget that the enteric region is the foundation to the heart center.
You might want to remind our listeners about the enteric region.
The enteric brain is in the lower part of your body, and it's called the gut brain. It's in the intestines, the perineum, and that's the physicality of it. Its energy emanates feet outside of your body, up to the base of the sternum, and the perineum. And this is critical. This is your emotional foundation. And when this area is centered and balanced, you will find your disease cures. You will find balance within your relationships, but first you have to have it within yourself. But its energy balances you in your relationships.
Ruth, we have about 5 minutes left on this call, and I want to ask if you have any advice for people who are trying to get at the root of themselves and knowing their true self in a fast way, in an efficient way, in the best way that they can kind of wrap their minds around, that self-knowledge that leads to the action that we take to keeping our life on track, our human will in alignment with our divine will. Do you have any advice on how to get people to really know themselves in an easy way, or to at least open a door?
Yes.
I thought so. Tell us.
First, number one, don't be afraid to look inside.
Okay.
Number two. Buy my book.
Oh, well, that's, yeah.
No, an unseen life, and this is what Michael is. I'm sorry, Archangel. The team, the entire Ascended Master team, was with me as I wrote this, and the Archangel realm, the Archangelic realm, was with me when I wrote this, and it is everything that they taught me up through the moment of writing this book, and while writing the book. And it is an unseen life when the extraordinary becomes ordinary. And in that book, it takes you, there are tools that will help you go through your journey. It brings you into understanding the normalcy for those walking a spiritual path, for those who are shifting away from what is familiar to them into their unfamiliar authenticity. And it really does have, it has, they're calling it standard steps of operation. That it works for everybody.
No matter what generation you're in?
Correct. No, you're getting them precisely, Mary.
Okay, perfect. Because I think that I get hung up on who was born when these days, because there are so many of us at so many different ages out there.
Well, and here's the thing is that, we touched a little bit about this generation of light that's coming in, whether anybody wants to call them crystals, millennials, indigos, copper, whatever, pick a color, turquoise, it doesn't matter. They have a light quotient that is unequaled in previous generations.
And is it just because of the evolution of humanity that we're making these races possible? Humans have been creating themselves over and over and over, to the point now where we are sort of advancing our cellular DNA.
Number one, think of cellular DNA as people's karma.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's kind of that. Just understand that. And yes, evolution has occurred. What were you going to say? The power within a human. I'm saying the wrong thing, so give me just a minute. Thank you. Right now, we use such a small piece of our brain, part of our brain, in the intellectually and cognitively. We use so little of that information, of that power. And so, what this is doing is taking it from, say, if someone's using 5% of their brain, if 5% of the brain was the average right now, this leap is taking us to 30%. And so that is, in 60 years, there's another leap that takes us to 60%. So this generation that's now on the planet is a bridge for future generations. Yes, it's getting faster, and it's okay.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. I don't think I'll be here for that, but I like
You may have returned by then.
Well, possibly, but I liked what you said the other day when I was saying about my questioning whether or not this was the age of, this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And what did you say?
Oh gosh, I can't even remember. This is the...
You said the sun is up.
Yeah, the sun is definitely up. Yeah, we are beyond
the dawn. We're beyond the dawn. So
that's right. I do remember that. Sun's up, Mary.
Well, we are an hour into this program, and it feels pretty complete to me. How are you feeling? Anything to add?
I am feeling very complete as well. I appreciate the pre-recording of this. Mary and I are taking off for the holidays. She is spending time with her community, and I'm spending time with my community. And we hope that everyone has an incredibly beautiful holiday. Love yourselves. Think of your true nature. When you are finding yourselves in situations of conflict, come into that neutral center that Mary was speaking about. Think of water, think of neutral, think of neutrality, think of neutralizing. Be in peace within you and know that love is in there, and allow it to come forward.
And find the humor. Keep laughing. Spread the gift of laughter this holiday season.
Learn to laugh at the pain too.
Exactly right. Absolutely.
Mary, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ruth. We will catch up with you again in the new year.
Yes, this is the Conversation Unscripted, and happy holidays. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.